At the time of filming, we're March 23rd, 2018, and the Republicans have just endorsed a candidate, Pearl Kim. There's another candidate that jumped in late, but anyway, the Republicans, there were 6, and the Republicans endorsed a candidate. And right now, it's before a nominating convention for the Democratic Party, and there's 14 congressional candidates for this 5th district, and that's the district that would represent Delaware County.
Right.
Now, again, compare and contrast the approaches of the two different political parties, how the GOP handles their party and how Democrats typically handle their party.
I would say it's democracy versus discipline. The Republicans appear to be very disciplined. They're going to put their efforts behind one person. The Democratic Party is going to, they've opened it up. They want people to run, or they encourage people to run because they believe in democracy. But what that does is it dilutes the vote. And what you might have, and I don't know how it's going to play out, but you might have a very destructive fight for that nomination. I can compare that directly to 1938, when Governor Earl, who was the first Democratic governor in Pennsylvania since the 19th century, had just finished the last 2 of his 4 years as governor, very successful, brought the Little New Deal to Pennsylvania, and the Democrats decided, this is great, now we just continue with this plan, but they didn't get together and endorse one person. They had a number of people that were vying for the Democratic nomination, and what they did, it turned into bloody warfare, and the Republicans, a guy named Arthur James, won the election because the Democrats just split the vote. There's a time for democracy, but there's a time, you have to be practical in politics. And unfortunately, politics is not always that democratic. You can, stand on your high horse and say, well, above all else, we want democracy. McClure didn't care about democracy. He cared about delivering what people wanted, and that's why he stayed in power. And if the Democratic Party wants to be successful, they'll very quickly get behind one person. They'll do what they need to do to satisfy the people who they don't endorse. With what kind of promises, I don't know. But they need to exercise the same amount of discipline as far as their choice of candidates as the Republicans do, and perhaps then they'll have a shot at it.
Well, but aren't you proposing a different form of government almost, at least at the primary stage?
I don't think I'm proposing a different form of government, because it hasn't been democratic in this county since 1875, probably since the Civil War. No, it's politics is the art of the possible, and it's wonderful if you can have people running and you have these kind of altruistic motives, and people are just they're focused on the great issues of the day. Politics is a down and dirty, day-to-day blood sport. And people should understand that. McClure was so good at what he did because he understood it's blood sport. And the Democrats, if they want long-term to be successful, although I wouldn't wish too much success on them, because the success the Democrats had in Philadelphia in the 1950s evolved into the Democratic machine that runs that city now. I think it's human nature that one party being in power too long, and it loses its reformist, altruistic motivations. But nonetheless, you can't be too idealistic. You have to be practical. You have to be pragmatic at some point. And as I say, they would do well to get behind one candidate. And of course, they still have the president to run against, which is a help. And perhaps they'll win. They've won before.
So what danger do you see to a group of stubborn, persevering candidates who say, I'm a great candidate, I didn't have the endorsement, but I'm going to the end because I know that I am good for my district. What do you say to a county that's got a group of maybe 5 to 7 that won't get out of the race because they think that, darn it, they'll be a good congressperson?
I say you're going to guarantee the election of your opponent. Ross Perot is a perfect example. You know, anytime a third party, a third candidate, or more get into the race, they're going to get some votes. Where would those votes go if that candidate or those candidates weren't in the race? They're probably going to go to whoever's left from that party. It's self-destructive to do that.
And why? Why not just let it play out? Won't the best person win?
No.
Why?
The person with the best organization is going to win.
Why?
Because that's the way politics works. It's discipline. And if the Republicans are running one candidate against 4 or 5 Democratic candidates, unless that one candidate is so powerfully popular that just overwhelms everybody else, the vote will be split and the Republican won't win a majority, but he'll win a plurality, and that's all he wants.
But won't it be settled at the primary, and then they all drop out, and then you have a second bite?
It depends on how the primary is conducted. And if it gets bitter, and I don't know these candidates, but if it gets bitter, that could last into the general election.
And then you have division when it comes to the general.
Sure, yeah. It's you know, this term political science is the silliest term in the world. There's nothing scientific about the way people behave, and particularly how they behave in politics. You can do all the polling you want, and my good friend does a lot of polling. But people run on emotion, and people run on their wants and desires. And they're going to vote for the person they think they want to have in office because that person is going to do the best for them, not for society generally or their borough or their township. That's just the way it is.
Did we see some of this in the presidential election of 2016 in the Democratic Party?
Yeah, we did. We saw it in, well, we didn't see it in 2000. I started to say we saw it in 2008. I thought the 2008 primary was going to kill the Democratic Party because, if you recall, it got very bitter between Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. They managed to mend fences. In 2016, we saw some of it. Excuse me. Excuse me. Particularly in the Republican, well, in the Democratic Party, there was some questionable tactics that were employed to kind of diminish the threat of Bernie Sanders because he wasn't the organization's choice in that election.
Right. But afterwards, you had everyone unify around Trump, and it looks like some Bernie Sanders supporters did not unify around Hillary.
They were very bitter.
Sure.
Very, very bitter.
And the results are history.
Yeah.
So again, to summarize, your words are one of a warning to the 5th Congressional District, the Democrats of that district.
Yeah. Ethics are great. Ideals are great. Being idealistic is great. You can be idealistic after you get in office, but you got to get there first.
All right. John, let's leave it there. And I want to thank you for being a guest on Delaware County Political News.
Nice to be here.
We have been here with Professor John McLarnon, and I am your host, Larry DeMarco. If you like this video, please share it with all your contacts, and please subscribe to the channel.